Single mum Donna was caring for her family and working in hospitality when things beyond her control set her off course.
When we had my children, I stayed at home and just worked part-time jobs in hospitality. Then I developed carpal tunnel, lots of lifting in hospitality. And after I'd had surgery, then I had a bus accident. So that sort of led to my long-term unemployment, I'm afraid.
She's been eager to get back to work, completing a diploma in community services and helping to work with the Asylum Seeker Resource Centre. But until she lands something, Donna is living on just $50 a week after mortgage, a figure that limits her ability to do anything but just get by.
I simply can't justify going out for dinner with friends when there's bills to pay, because it all costs money.
In June, the number of people on employment benefits had fallen to 1 million from 1.5 the previous year. But of that 1 million, the long-term unemployed had risen to 826,000. That's more than double what it was 30 years ago during the recession, when the situation prompted a national inquiry.
We now have the largest number of people who've been affected by long-term unemployment than the country has ever seen.
Long-term unemployment is a cycle that's hard to break. Businesses often favour the recently employed, and for job seekers, it's harder to look presentable for an interview on a low income.
The frustration of not being able to get out there and do that, and to constantly come up against barrier after barrier, it's demoralising. Yeah, your confidence takes a battering every single day.
Cassandra Goldie is the CEO of the Australian Council of Social Service and joins us now. Cassandra, this unemployment rate isn't news that anyone wanted, obviously, but isn't it to be expected on some level, given that we are coming up on 2 years of COVID and lockdowns?
Well, tragically, it's not a surprise, but we need to talk more about it and we need to be doing something about it. We've now got the largest number of people who've been affected by long-term unemployment the country's ever seen. We did predict that. We knew big economic shock, and it has been long, as you say. So if you were unlucky enough to be out of a job when the pandemic hit, if you faced any of those kinds of barriers, you went to the back of the queue, and we've now got large numbers of people who have been out of paid work on income support for, a year, 2 years. That kind of picture is pretty grim.
I understand the problem of long-term unemployment is a really serious one, but these are very different circumstances. Is there a possibility that there will be a decent chunk of those who are long-term unemployed that will find it easier to get back into employment than, say, in the normal course of events if they were long-term unemployed?
Well, I wish that was the case, but things have changed from, say, the big recessions of the 1990 when, we again had a really high number of people unemployed. Now, for people who've been out of paid work for over 2 years, over half have a disability. Historically, those people would have at least had access to the much more adequate disability support pension. They're now on that grisly $45 a day job seeker, along with everybody else. Almost half of people who've been out of paid work for over 2 years are over 55 years of age. And so classic situation, people facing discrimination, barriers to being at the front of that queue. And of course, we've had lots of people lose their jobs. They're trying to get their hands back on paid work, and people who face those kinds of barriers are really struggling at the moment.
So, Cassandra, in your view, what should the government be doing?
Well, they need to stop hectoring people and blaming people for the situation they're in. The system we've got now is cruel, Lisa. Mutual obligations are back where you've got to apply for 20 jobs a month, regardless of your circumstances, regardless of where you live. Threats are being cut off from income support. And instead, we need to see people as individuals with the potential to get back into paid work, design that retraining, that reskilling, understand that you're going to need support to be at the front of the queue. We spend less than half of the OECD average on employment support services for people in this country. That needs to change. And certainly we need to fix that rate of job seeker, it needs to be much higher, like the disability support pension, at least $67 a day. That's the absolute minimum. Look, you can't live on $45 a day. It's not a short-term payment. We know that. And these figures today show, again, that how many people are living on it for months and sometimes for years.
Cassandra, good to talk.
Thanks a lot.
Amy, these figures obviously not good, but it's quite a complicated thing to get a real handle on exactly who's been affected by these numbers, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And I think that's because there's like 108 different labour markets across the country. So it really depends on where you are, what you're feeling, which is also why the government isn't making a huge deal about this too. So they like to sprout the numbers and go, isn't this great? But they're not pushing it too far because they know that in some areas people are really, really hurting still and the vibe is all off. So they don't want to pretend everything's fine when it's not.
Yes, because you can point to... People don't vote on economic figures.
No.
They vote on their experience of the economy.
Exactly.
But what I think is interesting is, so partially this increase in unemployment has been driven by more people looking for work. That's a good thing. So does that suggest that people are becoming more optimistic in some way? They might be feeling that actually lockdowns are beginning to be a thing of the past. I can get out there again, and there's actually more confidence in the economy than we think.
Well, maybe. I mean, an economy is always about confidence. I think it's a lot of places were shut down and those jobs didn't exist, so people fell out of the labour market. But now they're back and they're looking for work because unemployment figures is just people who are employed and people who are looking for work. You're not counted if you're not looking for work. So there's a lot of things going on in there, and as with anything that we talk about with politics or the economy, never look at the number, always look at the underlying factors.
We have just spent a segment looking at the number.
Exactly, so we're doing it right.
Okay.